Despite the virtual, it's just been a very high bar. Like, wow, the people are great. The content has been amazing. So thank you all for having me. Alrighty. So now we're going to get started. So let's talk about open sourcing mentorship. What does that exactly mean? What are the obstacles associated with it? And so let's dive in. So what if there was a resource for mentors, mentees, and those looking to get started, a resource that helped improve both the quantity and the quality of mentorship. And it did that by combining strategies, resources, and community support. And so this is essentially a talk in the story of what led to this idea of open sourcing mentorship and how this was very much influenced by my journey. Back when I was just starting my coding journey and I was asking myself, am I good enough? Am I passionate enough? Do I even belong? And so this is a talk about how mentorship is important, the obstacles associated with it, and how we as a community can make mentorship more accessible to all. And so as a disclaimer, I am by no means the world's leading expert in mentorship. I'm frankly just someone who believes in the power of it and who is thankful for it. And I think that's what's great about it is that anyone can contribute ideas, questions, feedback, and more so that we can make mentorship just more accessible to everyone. So let's start off by really defining what do we mean by mentorship? And you see, it's a tricky question and it's a fun question because mentorship means different things to people. To some, it's a formal endeavor. To others, it's informal. Some believe it can only happen in the workplace. Others believe it can happen anywhere, in a meetup, in a conference, in a coffee shop. Others prefer to have an agenda. Others prefer more of the spur of the moment. To some folks, mentorship is this ongoing weekly conversation and you meet at a certain time on a certain date. To others, mentorship is just this one-time phone call or a one-time video call. It could be 10 minutes and that's it. And that's mentorship. Others also make the distinction between mentorship and sponsorship. Others view it as one and the same. And so in summary, what this means is that mentorship means different things to people. And while the obstacle there is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to mentorship, it's also an opportunity because that means we can all collectively contribute our strategies, experiences, and community support. Because, for example, mentorship may look like one thing for someone in parts of North America in a certain level of their career. Mentorship may look different in parts of Europe or Africa or South America from where I'm from, or Asia. And so how do we account for that? And that's what's great about just applying these open source principles and technologies to this. So mentorship means different things to people, and that's both an obstacle, but also an opportunity of how to make this a more vibrant project for us all. So now let's take a step of what do we mean by open source? At the end, it's just something that's built by the community and for the community, something that reflects just how vibrant we are and how inclusive we can be, but also that just unifies us all. And more specifically, though, in the context of this idea of open sourcing mentorship, it's really about following a few of these principles that are credited to the open source way on opensource.com. And it's, for example, being transparent as we go about building this community and project. It's about being collaborative. It's about releasing early and often, getting feedback and iterating and improving on that. It's about this inclusive meritocracy of ideas and formally agreeing and consensus. And it's about community. And more importantly, it's community. At the end, it's just something built by the people, for the people, so that we can all benefit. And with mentorship, again, it's something that's both universal because it can manifest in so many different ways, but it's also something very personal, meaning how we experience it, again, differs by country. It can differ by cultural. It can differ by personal situations. It could differ depending on what state and mood we're in, the environment, the day of the week. But the point is, if we can open source mentorship, now we're really creating this growing community that's global, inclusive. It's reflecting and uniting us. And more importantly, mentorship has this fantastic ripple effect in that when you help others, you help this community. What we put in, we get out. And it's a ripple effect that, frankly, we sometimes can't see the immediate effect. It may take days, it may take weeks, it may take months and more, but we just have to trust that in sharing knowledge and sharing experiences, connections, resources, and more, there is this positive ripple effect and how it boomerangs back to us. And that's what's great is even when you think about just where you are right now and reflect on how'd you get here? Was it a purely solo effort, or were there people along the way or organizations who helped you in some way, whether it was big or it was large, small? And that's this mentorship ripple effect. So that's the key point is when you help others, we help ourselves. And by doing that, we create this cyclical nature of this inclusive, welcoming, diverse community. But that said, despite the benefits, despite the progress made, mentorship is still not accessible to all. And for example, here you have this doodle that I drew here. And if you look in the yellow, orange, vibrancy area, there are a group of individuals and they're sharing their knowledge, they're sharing their resources, and together they're all collectively growing and improving, reaching their goals. But then you have other folks who are in this gray cloud of confusion, gray cloud of uncertainty, meaning they know the importance of mentorship and they believe in the power of it, but they're not sure how to tap into it. Like, how do I find a mentor? Where do I mentor? How do I even approach someone if I'm not already connected or if I'm not part of a formal program? And that's not to say the folks in the yellow don't want to help or don't want to give back. In fact, I think most do, but they may not know how to pay for it. How do you bring people into these mentoring relationships? And so mentorship is still not accessible to all. And that's where mentoring and open source communities can make it accessible. And if we were to really boil down this concept, it comes down to just mentorship is just sharing what you can, when you can, and how you can. And by that, I mean, what you can share knowledge, experiences, resources. When you can share it when you have some time, when you have a brief 10 minutes, when you have a brief hour, maybe sometimes it's a busier week in the workday, maybe it's a later month, just whenever you can. And then it's how you can. Again, some folks prefer to write, others prefer to have one-on-one conversations, others prefer to do more behind the scenes work. There's just so many different ways to just keep sharing these knowledges and experiences. And that's what this open source project is about, is how do we collectively combine these strategies, resources, so that others that want to mentor or want to become mentees, where do they go? Where do they learn about these things? And one of my fun things about just this mentoring is that you may be mentoring already and not knowing it. I think for the longest time, most people, myself included, viewed mentorship as something that can only happen formally and in the workplace, meaning you had to be part of a formal program and you had to have like a quote unquote mentee or quote unquote mentor. And that was it. But if you weren't doing that, then you weren't mentoring. But I'm a believer that we may be mentoring already and we may not even knowing it, just by answering a question, just by taking a conversation, by listening to someone, by doing all different ways, just pretty much by helping. I think that is a form of mentorship in and of itself. And then for folks that want to do more of it, how do we support and encourage that? And wherever you find yourself right now, whether you think you are a mentor or you think you are a mentee or you're looking to get started, it's not too late and it's not too early at any time to start forming these wonderful, helpful, mutual, beneficial relationships. So first, again, to recap, open sourcing mentorship is about connecting the ideas and resources out there. I think there's so many programs out there, initiatives, articles, books that talk about mentorship in all different ways. But I think the difficulty is that they're scattered, meaning they may be in certain pockets of one community, then into another pockets of another community, but they're not unified. Or maybe they are centralized somewhere, but then they may be outdated. So like, what about today, and what about what's coming up for later in the month? Similar, some folks may have certain ideas of this is how we can mentor in a specific situation or be a mentee in a specific situation, but it's isolated to just the individual and their close circle. But why not also make that aware for other folks who may benefit from that? And more so, it's also just building the community behind mentors and mentees so that we can speak more, we can talk more, we can brainstorm, we can collaborate. When we have questions and we're like, oh, what do we do in this situation? What did you do? And we can share our experiences and we can share our thoughts. And so after we connect what exists, it's about finding the gaps and seeing what is missing. Now that we've connected different types of information, different types of programs, what isn't out there? What still doesn't exist that we can, as a community now, build and create, whether it's tooling, whether it's services, APIs, or maybe it's other kinds of documentation or other kinds of platforms. So first connect what exists, and now how do we build what still isn't there so that we can make sure that by filling these gaps, we're now making mentorship more accessible to people. And so now I want to transition from this, why open source and mentorship is something so dearly important to me. And the reason here, and I believe I mentioned it earlier, but as a disclaimer, I am by no means an expert on mentorship. I'm frankly just someone who's thankful for it and believes in the power of it. And I think that's what's great, is you don't have to be an expert in any way. You just share your experiences, share your knowledge, share it where you can, when you can, and how you can. And so now that we've gone through what is mentorship, how are we defining it, what do we mean by open source, now I want to share a little bit of my story and how these principles and ideas kind of fit into this. So at the start of my coding journey, so today I'm a software engineer helping build tech to build communities. I had these but before that, at the start of my coding journey, I had these high hopes. You know, I had my backpack of knowledge of this smile on my face. There was this blue skies and the sun was shining. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to start. I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to be part of this wonderful, technical, inclusive, welcoming community and do my part to make the world a better place. It was fantastic. I had these high hopes. But then there was questions that started popping up in my head, like, am I good enough? And so here you have me with a question mark on my head. And I would start, frankly, comparing myself to colleagues, to peers and more, where I just saw them as larger because they had more knowledge or more experiences. And I felt that there was this distance between myself and them, and that there were these questions, there was this crevice, this gap of questions, like, how do I even get to where they are? Am I good enough? And so that was one question. And then this other question was, am I passionate enough? Again, here was I, and I was looking at groups of folks, and they just seemed so focused and so engrossed and so just determined with their self and their computer, their terminal, and they were just building and creating away. And here I was thinking, how do we use code and technology for the community? How do we combine it with wellness? How do we combine it with tech for good? I had this misconception and bias that thankfully was later corrected, but I only thought technologists, engineers only built gadgets. And while I am very thankful for the folks working on embedded systems or Wi-Fi standards, etc., I personally didn't see myself doing that. And I thought, well, maybe then this journey of code is not for me. And so I thought, I'm just not passionate enough for this career, for this lifestyle. I should just stop altogether. And then we have me here in this purple, where I started asking myself, do I even belong? You know, now I looked outwardly into this community thinking, wow, here everyone just seems like they got it all together and they're all building things and creating things. And here I felt out of shape, meaning I had certain perspectives on technology and how we can use it to benefit the world. I had certain experiences that I, like, how do I connect with people? And so I thought maybe this isn't the community for me. So if we remember, at one point there was these blue skies and this sunshine and this backpacking knowledge, ready to get started and ready to continue this journey. I now was thinking maybe I should just stop altogether. And I almost stopped before even starting, putting down my backpack, walking away, going to pursue something else that I know I didn't want to do, but I thought I should because I couldn't. But I am here today. I am speaking today. I am an engineer and a technologist today. And that's because of community. Really, it was community in both direct means and indirectly that just helped me at different points, whether they were mentors, whether they thought they were mentoring me formally or informally. They were helping me answer these questions together of, do I belong? Am I passionate enough? Am I good enough? So I'm here thanks to community. And that's why I think community is so important and so beneficial and so powerful, which I think us all attending believe that. And so how do we make that more accessible to people that aren't tapped into the community yet? How do we bring them in so they can see the benefits and form these relationships and grow and learn in their careers and more? And in my day-to-day, I'm now both a mentor and a mentee, like a flip and flop. And sometimes I have questions, sometimes I'm giving suggestions and advice, other times I'm curious about something, so I'm asking another thing. And with that said, now that I'm a quote unquote formal mentor, there was these obstacles because I thought, okay, now I feel like I'm good enough. Well, why should I pay it forward? I was thinking to myself, I don't have the time. I'm not an expert. What if I give the wrong advice? What if I give too much advice? What if, so many what ifs. Those are big shoes to fill. It was a little intimidating. I didn't know if I was going to do a good job or not. And so there was these obstacles of like, why do I even need to mentor? And again, there was these frequently asked questions for mentors that we started seeing in the community. And that's what this project's also trying to outline and help with is like, why should I mentor? Why do I need to when I'm okay? Why would I want to keep paying it forward? Then there is a question of why do others mentor? Despite all their responsibilities and commitments, why do they keep helping? Or maybe it's this question of, am I mentoring already? And if I think I'm not, then how do I become one? Do I sign up somewhere? Where do I go? Where do I find mentees? What do I do? And this is what this guide is aimed to help with. Frankly, there's also different styles of mentorship. In which we're going to talk about in a bit, there's different styles that depends on how you want to have these relationships with. What's my mentorship style? Again, where and when do I mentor? And then now that maybe I've been mentoring, again, however that's defined for many years, many months, many days, how do I grow? How do you quantify that? How do we be more systematic with that if that's something that we're seeking? And many more questions. And now going back to, from the mentee's perspective, there were these frequently asked questions in that regard, meaning, where do I find these mentors? Like, how does everyone say, oh man, do I go on LinkedIn? Do I go on Twitter? Do I go to conferences? Where do I find these individuals? I want help. I would love to and appreciate their advice and experiences and expertise. How do I tap into that? And maybe now as a mentee, I have someone, but now what do we talk about? What do I ask them? There's so many questions. How do I be mindful and respectful of their time? In essence, how do I grow as a mentee? And how do I combine this idea that I can be both the mentor and a mentee at whatever stage I am in my life? And more questions. And so that brings us to mentorship.guide. So that's the website you can visit. It's the resource to provide strategies, community support, and more. Again, it's very much still just a plant that eventually can become a forest built by already some folks. And now it's like, how do we contribute to it? How do we water this plant so that it keeps growing and benefits all those who seek from it? So mentorship.guide is the website. And there's different flows. You can go as a mentor, as a mentee, or you can contribute, whether it's ideas, questions, resources, and more. And so here you find when you first approach the site, there is a section for I'm a mentor, I'm a mentee, and I want to contribute. And it takes you to different paths depending on where you find yourself. So one page, there's a lot of different pages, a lot of different information. We're all still trying to figure out how do we essentially architect this information, not only from not from the technical perspective, but more so just there's so much content. How do we make it just the experience of finding and searching for content be that much better? So here we have this idea of mentorship styles at the page. And there are, for example, there's one style called an educator, meaning some folks as a mentor, they like to educate, they like to teach and share concepts and ideas, they like to help and clarify material, they like to share the knowledge and experiences. And using that as an example, when I was asking myself, am I good enough? There were those same people I was comparing myself, the colleagues, peers, etc. They took this style of educating me. They helped provide certain gaps in my knowledge. They helped explain certain things at another level, another way, so I could understand a little better. And so it was through this mentoring, this peer mentorship, really, that what used to be this gap of questions that was separating me from the other side made me realize, actually, I am good enough. They helped build this bridge of knowledge so that we can all celebrate in this community and keep paying it forward. And now we have another mentorship style called more of like an encourager or a listener, meaning maybe you're not exactly providing knowledge or experiences, but you're providing encouragement, which is also important, reminding the mentee of their progress, their accomplishments, of their potential to keep doing great work. Or some take this role as a listener. Again, not necessarily encouraging, not necessarily educating on something. It's just you're there to actively listen. And that in itself is also powerful, to show the solidarity, to show this accountability that I'm here and I'm here to help. And so going back to the question, when I was thinking to myself, am I passionate enough? Am I passionate enough to continue in this career? The same individuals I was comparing myself with, like, wow, they just seem so engrossed in the world of code, and me, I like code, but I like so many other things. I realized that we were using code, but we were combining with all our other interests and hobbies. Again, some were, how do we combine code with the arts, with the humanities, with the sciences, with writing and more. And I realized, yes, code, yes, technology was a unifying factor, but we also had so many other interests. And we all wanted to contribute and do more of that. So I realized, oh, wow, actually, I am passionate enough. And how do we help each other with that? And now we have another mentorship style on a finder, or more of a connector, meaning you may not necessarily know all the answers from the get-go, from the beginning, but you're more than happy to help find these answers and help research, maybe by finding certain resources, books, videos, content, courses, and more. Or you may take more of a connector approach, in that you just enjoy connecting people with other people, with other resources, with other programs. And so going back to this question of, do I belong? When I thought like I didn't fit into this community, that I was out of shape, in the sense, there were individuals who brought me in, who held my hand and said, hey, Geddes, listen, we all come from different backgrounds, different experiences, different parts of the world. We all bring our own thing too. We all add to this wonderful, vibrant, inclusive, welcoming community. Don't feel this pressure. Just bring yourself. And together, all the different shapes and colors and different experiences, we would all fit and build this great community. So I realized, actually, I do belong in the tech world. So again, here's a summary of different mentorship styles. Some are educators, some are encouragers, listeners, finders, connectors, and more. And again, it doesn't mean it's static. Sometimes you take a role for the next hour. Sometimes it's depending on who you're with. And again, this is just a subset of it. There's so many others. If we're also missing one, please contribute. There's different other kinds of paradigms, different other kinds of patterns. The idea here is that from someone who's just looking to get started in mentoring or wants a different perspective, this just helps provide another point of view, so that we can increase, again, the quality and the quantity. And so definitely learn more at mentorship.guide. And another thing I wanted to call out here is there's different forms of mentorship, depending on so many different factors. It's fascinating of how we can decompose mentorship in different ways, meaning the structure of it. Do you prefer more formal? Do you prefer being part of a formal program? Or is it more informally? You just want to have a conversation whenever they need to happen. Then there is, depending on what kinds of questions do you do you prefer as a mentor? Do you prefer broad questions on like, what should I do in this scenario? What advice do you have for me in my career? Or do you prefer more like specific questions, like actually, what should I do in this case with this specific technology? There's also, how do you like to give your answers? Do you prefer to give more broad general advice, or do you like to give more specific advice? Meaning, okay, you want to do A, and then you want to do B, and then C. And then we go into different types of engagement levels. Do you prefer this high engagement where you're like frequently checking in, or do you prefer you just leave the door open, and so that whenever anyone has a question, they can come and ask away? There's also different kinds of communication delivery. Do you prefer the phone? Do you prefer video? Do you prefer email, online message boards, and more? Point being, what this is all to say is that there's different forms of mentorship. Whatever is best for you, however you want to mentor, that's what's most important. Because if we can do that, we increase the quantity of mentors. And as we're increasing the quantity, we're also increasing the quality. And so now we're also creating the next generation of mentees who then also are mentoring and keep paying it forward. So it's like the cyclical cycle of just goodness. And thank you to some of the chats here as well. Appreciate the encouragement. I much very making me feel good, and just more so just out of gratitude that all those folks, taking a quick tangent here, all the folks who helped me get to where I am today, their ripple effect is still rippling. And then so as much as everyone else's, we're just all connected. So that information is on the guide, and the top left and the left side pane, we also see just different areas of where do I find, for example, pure advice from other mentees, pure advice from other mentors, all the different mentorship programs, or the additional resources, to be determined at one point. Is this community support? Where do people talk and collaborate and do more of this? More importantly, the code of conduct, contributing, so much more. So what this brings us to is just sharing what you can, when you can, and how you can. That's what mentorship is really about. It doesn't matter how it's defined. Doesn't matter if you do it formally. Doesn't matter if you do it informally. What matters is that you do it as a mentor and as a mentee, and that in itself, just trusting that is going to have a ripple effect. In some cases, you'll see it immediately because you'll see something click, or you'll see a positive effect or accomplishment. But more importantly, what we don't see, and I think that's super important, is this ripple effect that happens for days, for months, years, generations to come. And it started with us as mentors, it started with us as mentees, and it's a whole ripple effect. And so as we're starting to wrap this up, going back here, actually, there's really two call to actions here. One is visiting mentorship.guide and contributing. Again, if you have ideas, if you have resources, what we really want to nail down is making sure it's inclusive and reflective of the community, and to have a great contributor experience. How do we make sure anyone can contribute, whether it's technical or whether it's through writing or whether it's through questions, ideas? How do we make sure it's a good contributor experience? How do we make sure it's a good user experience as a reader, as a consumer of the content? Once you get to the stage of building out tools and services, APIs if needed, how do we make sure it's a good developer experience? Overall, just making sure anyone who's involved with this idea of open sourcing mentorship, that it's global, because mentorship isn't just isolated to one parts of the world. It's all across different worlds, all across different cultures. But how do we reflect that? And right now, there really isn't, or maybe there isn't. There is, that'd be fantastic. Please send it our way. A resource that kind of just collects all of this. And so the call to action here is check out mentorship.guide, contribute in whatever way possible. Reach out to me on Twitter. Also email me. My info is there. Or what I really would like to do, if there's only one thing you do after this, is really just take the time to think of someone who helped you in some way, whether they were a formal mentor or they were just someone who helped you and they were informally a mentor. Take the time to just say, quick 2-minute email, text, call, anything, just saying, hey, thank you for X, Y, and Z. And I really appreciated that. And the reason being is just to reinforce the idea that there's these ripple effects going on everywhere, hopefully positive, so that we can continue that and keep paying it forward. So now, that's it. So now we're going to move it to Q&A portion. I believe we have some minutes for that. So thank you all very much for your time. And appreciate the comment on the passion for mentorship. Yes, it's the least I could do. It's wouldn't be where I am had it not been for others. And to just do one little part, connecting resources, connecting folks, it's an honor. So now moving to Q&A time. If you, as the questions come up, feel free to post it here. Similar, while you're on this chat, if you have ideas, if you have resources, links, just paste them all there. Later, we'll collate and organize that, put them on the guide. I'll also, here on the chat, I'm typing my, what is this? Here is I'm typing my contact information. I'm very open to like coffee chats, or virtual coffee chats. Find time to have a one-on-one, to talk more. If I can help in any way, please, that's especially more important. Always happy to connect, always happy to do whatever I can to just do good. So here I will paste my information in a bit, but we do have a question here. Let's see. So we have answering these live just for the future viewers. So we have a question on how do you take different cultural traits into consideration while mentoring? Ooh, fantastic question. And that, I think, is something we're trying to, what the guide is trying to account for, is that different cultures, in a different culture, there's different communication preferences, there's different types of like nuances, and we want to be mindful of that. So the guide itself is trying to account for that, but let me see if I can find it here in my notes. There are some good resources already that someone recently shared. Let me give me 1 second on how do we develop cultural empathy, and it gets to the heart of that. And if I don't find it here, stay tuned for the guide itself. Oh man, hold on, let's see. All right, here we go. So there is, I'm just pasting some links here. So one, there's this book on cultural map book, and that kind of, it's 2 books actually, hold on. 1 second, let me find these here. Okay, so there's a few. There is this cultural map book, and that tries to kind of aggregate just different cultures and how do you communicate with different cultures and how there may be some nuances there. And there's another one called When Cultures Collide that also has some good resources there. There's another one called Simon Wardley Mapping, and I'll type these out in a bit. So I'd say that's the first step, is one, being more knowledgeable of different cultures, but then how do we bridge that with mentorship itself? So it's, to sum it up, it's a great question that I myself still have not seen too many resources on, but I think that's also a good opportunity for us to start sharing and contributing. Like, how have we personally engaged in these kind of relationships and interactions, and using it more from like building bottom to top, from experiences, from collective experiences, and then collating that. So great question there, and I will paste these in a bit too. I'm also taking stock of who did, so I can reach out personally. Let's see what's the next question here. Oh yes, so thank you for sharing here. So someone mentioned, just sharing my story about self-doubt. I think it's something I wish, again, it is hard to do, but when possible, just being a little bit more vulnerable in a safe context, of course, so that folks realize there's some who like got it all together, maybe not, but there's this phrase I heard, and it's called like effortless perfection. And you kind of like imagine like a duck, and the duck is on water. And so this duck, you just see it like on the water, just gliding very well, and it's just swimming. But underneath, you see it's like little flippers, and they're like flipping super, super quickly. So it's like it's working hard to stay afloat. But from the outside, they look like they got it all. They know the knowledge, they know they're skilled, etc. And so I very much, especially in these mentoring relationships, is like sharing like, hey, I actually don't have everything answered. I'm still trying to figure things out myself. And it kind of just helps set the stage of we're all just trying to do this together. And thankfully, there's been more conversations and just the scene in general about like imposter syndrome, which is great. I think at one point it was something that like the elephant in the room, and it wasn't talked about too much, but now it's getting more talked about, and just really letting know like, hey, no one's really perfect. Let's just share our obstacles, share our problems, and how can we all help each other with that? So thank you for that comment there. So someone asked about who is part of this community building this resource. I'd say right now it's just different kinds of people in different kinds of ways. There's some who are very active online. There's some who are very behind the scenes. And by that, it's really the actual answer who's part of the community. I'd say you, everyone. It's anyone can be a part of this, whether in the contributing section on the guide, you can find that you can contribute through code, meaning if you're comfortable, you can like go on the GitHub repository and make a pull request. If that's something that's very new, there's even like a little snippet of how do you do that. Or you can contribute through this like what you see, what you get editor. And so it's more like typing like a document, like Google Docs or Word. Or a quicker way is there's each page has a Google form. And this Google form really allows you to share question, ideas, resources. And then later on in the back end, we're all connecting, collating, and adding that to the guide. And as it's growing, we're leveraging, trying to get principles, inspiration from other well-known, more established communities on, as it expands and grows, how do we leverage these best practices on having more of a formal committee? How do we have these like weekly calls and making them accessible to anyone who wants to join? But frankly, the overarching quick answer is the committee is everyone. Right now, it's anyone who can share. It's anyone. There's no really blockage there. As long as we adhere to the code of conduct, that's what's most important. And more so, I think that is the key part, is because then we can really make it reflective and inclusive of the community. Okay. So someone asked a question on what is PR in this context. I want to say, I think that's in the contributing section where we wrote PR meaning like a pull request. And so that's a great question, because even that in itself just shows like we made certain assumptions there. So we should actually clear that up of what we meant by PR meaning pull request. And even then taking the time to educate too, like what is a pull request, and pointing to other resources. Because we've been seeing some great documentation. I think Gatsby in the Gatsby JS, that community does a good where there's the tutorials, and for each kind of section, they also point you to other resources. And so it's a great time where like, if you're coming fresh new, you can also learn along the way. So good question there. Thank you. Here's I like this phrase. So someone said, when one teaches to learn, and saying this phrase of, yes, I'm happy to mentor in whatever capacity I can. Really, I think that's a great job of just sharing that. It's just whatever you can. There's something, questions that you've had in the past, you can share that. You can share experiences, knowledge, and more. And also, yes, thank you, Melissa. There, just there's a link there to submit an evaluation for this talk itself. Please share what you thought. Again, thankfully, myself and all of us on this, and anyone who's joining, we pride our, like, one of the principles, like having a very low ego. Like, nothing is really taken personally. The idea is whatever we can do to make this guide more accessible to people and more inclusive. And that was my timer. And parting thoughts here as we start to wrap up. One, thank you very much. Oh, actually, before I forget, while I have you here in the chat, share my contact information here. Where is that? I have 6 more minutes. Whew. All right. Here's my other one. You can reach out any of these. Let me see. If you want to also go ahead and book just a coffee chat. There's this, I think this is it. Here's my link here too. Is that should work? Oh, wait, that's not it. I think it's calendar. If it's not that one, ignore that one. Calendar. The one that says calendar. That one, if you want to go from the beginning, if you just want to go straight to, let's just have a conversation, please there, or you can reach out and we can get the conversation started. So there was an additional question here. Any tips to help encourage others to mentor or share with others? And a few tips there. One, I think somewhere along the lines of this idea of mentorship, I think it's very language specific. A lot of folks have kind of certain myths or perceptions of mentorship. I think often when people hear mentorship, they think of like this like big formal program and you have to commit for like the next 6 weeks and you're meeting every hour or every week. to some are very much, yes, like that sounds fantastic. But to others, they're like, I don't know, that seems too much of an upfront time commitment, or it may be the first time. So tips on how to encourage others to mentor is, I would say, if someone comes to you with a question, I would try to connect them. And by that, I mean, someone came to me on, I forget which question specifically. And I know I have a friend who's very knowledgeable and he likes to share, but he doesn't really call himself a mentor. And so someone else reached out to me and like, hey, I'm thinking about this. Do you have any thoughts? I said, I personally do not know too much about that area of technology or role, but let me connect you with someone who can. And so then I asked my friend, first getting the permission, like, hey, do you mind if you have like a quick 15 minutes to chat with someone, or do you want to exchange by email? And that's fine. And so essentially I just helped connect them to. And so that's like an indirect way of first getting the permission and connecting them with someone who has the question. That's one way. The other question is taking the time to understand why they may not be doing it already. Again, some people think because of the commitment, or it's taking time to really share why I'm passionate. And I hope you can too, because I think you'd be great at it. Another time, it's also just kind of like letting them know of like, really one understanding why they may not be mentoring already, if that's not what they formally think they're doing, but maybe I think they really are in some other way. Then it's like understanding that, and then just sharing one's own experience. Like, hey, this is why I'm doing it. Maybe you can too. But I think really one of the best ways is just connecting them to someone else, or just so they get the glimpse of it and like, oh, wow, here, I just helped someone and it only took 15 minutes of my time. But that 15 minutes translates to like, it could be an hour, it could be a day, to more of someone else's time. But that's a great question. I think the guide, and if anyone has more thoughts, we should really think more about that, because that's a very common question. Oh, yes. So this idea of peer mentorship, I think that's fantastic. It's a good segue. Now we have like 2 more minutes here. Yeah, peer mentorship, I think is a great way of just helping each other out. Again, I think that, again, one of the obstacles of mentorship is the idea of like, there's one definition I think just overrides the most. And sometimes people think it's like hierarchical, meaning like I'm here and you're here, and therefore we can only be mentors and mentees. But really, I think mentorship can happen in any way. So as peers, however that's defined, like it's more like flat there's like flat structure, meaning I have experiences, you have experiences, how can we help each other out? I've seen that manifest in different ways of like these accountability groups, these mastermind groups. What that just means is folks get together and they're vocal about, these are my goals, these are my questions, and they meet regularly or just whenever they need to share their thoughts, experiences. I haven't seen too much literature on that, but I know I know people do that in isolation or in their circles, but I haven't seen too much literature on that. But I think that's a good opportunity to write more about that, to discuss that more, because peer mentorship, again, mentorship can happen anywhere. And so doing more of that and helping make that more fruitful. And so have 1 more minute. And last parting thoughts is, thank you all very much for just this, for your time and for your energy, for sticking around. And please reach out in any shape or form. Always love to talk more, contribute to the guide. Even if the contributor experience isn't as great, let us know. And again, there's so many improvements up to come. And take the time to thank the mentors who helped you in some way when you can. And just keep sharing what you can, when you can, how you can. Thank you all. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Definitely looking forward to continuing the conversation. I like meeting people. We all like meeting people. Please, let's just continue this. This is just I'd say the start of a journey, and please reach out, and then we can talk more. And before we know it, get that started, and so on and so more. These ripple effects. Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of the conference. And kudos also to, 1 more minute, to the organizers, staff, etc., for all this amazing work. And there was even a birds of a feather session on mentoring in the Drupal context too, which is fantastic. So thank you all, everyone. Pleasure. Please reach out. Thank you very much. And just share what you can, when you can, and how you can. Thank you.